Good morning, children.
Good morning, teacher.
How are you all?
Good morning.
Have you had your breakfast?
Yes.
Are you energetic?
Yes.
Shall we start the class?
Yes.
In the last class, I taught you about grandmother. So now, I am showing you a picture. Can you identify who is this? Anyone? And who is this? Yes. So this is the picture of a grandmother and her grandchildren. So how many of you have grandmother and grandfather at your home? Yes. Do you love them?
Yes.
So shall we start the class? Since you all know that you all love your grandmothers or grandparents, today I am going to teach you a chapter, a poem which is written by the famous poet Kamala Das, and the title of the poem is My Grandmother's House. Okay? The title of the poem is
My Grandmother's House.
Yes, My Grandmother's House, written by who?
Kamala Das.
Yes, Kamala Das. And do you know who Kamala Das is? Anyone? Yes. Very good. She was born and brought up in Kerala, and she is a famous short story writer, novelist, and a poet. So, in this poem, she mentions about her grandmother's house, and how she received love and affection from her grandmother, and also how she felt deserted when her grandmother died. So, shall we start the poem?
Yes.
So, please listen carefully while I am reciting the poem. Okay? So, the poem starts like this. There is a house now far away, and I received love. That woman died, and the house withdrew into silence, and snakes ran among the books, and I was too young to read, and my blood turned cold like the moon. So these are the first lines from the poem. So in the first line, it is said that there is a house now far away. What does that mean? The poet mentions that she lived in a house far away. Now she is living in a far house, and the house in which she lived with her grandmother was far away. So when she lived with her grandmother, she received what? She received love. So now you can know that I is used in this poem. No, I received is said, I quoted in the poem. So what is I here? Who is I? Can you please say?
The poet.
Yes, the poet. What is the name of the poet, Momani? Yes, Kamala Das. So Kamala Das herself is saying or mentioning in the poem, and it is narrated in a first person narrative. So she is saying that she lived in a house far away now, and she received love from that house. Also, from whom she received love? Yes, from her grandmother. So I received love. That woman died. What is that woman? Who is she mentioning as that woman? Yes, her grandmother. So the woman she is mentioning in that line is her grandmother. Okay, so and after the death of her grandmother and the woman died, she mentions that her grandmother died, and thus the house withdrew into silence. The house in which her grandmother was living along with her. After the death of her grandmother, the house withdrew into silence because there was no one in the house. And because the house was deserted, because there was no one in the house, there the snakes moved among the books. What moved? Snakes. So snakes moved among the books, and I was too young to read, which means that she was such a little girl that she didn't know how to read a book. And we can also interpret those lines in such a way that the handwritings in the books were difficult to read for the the poet. Why? Because she was too young to read, and thus she considered those letters as snakes. So, thus in that line it mentioned that snakes moved among the books. And we can also interpret moved among the books because the house was deserted and thus creatures moved among the books and house. And in the next line, she says that since she was too young to read, she didn't know the meaning of the books and everything. And also, when her grandmother died, she left pale, lonely and sad. Thus her breath turned what? Cold like the moon. So what did her breath turn? Cold like the moon. So here there is a figure of speech in the last line now I mentioned. Can anybody suggest which is the figure of speech?
Simile.
Yes, correct, Pawnani. Some of you have mentioned it correctly. It is simile because here cold like the moon is coming. So like when it comes like between the lines that we compare something with other with the help of like and thus, it is called as
Simile.
So here in these lines, the poet mentions that when her grandmother died, her life was full of melancholy, sad, and her life became lifeless because there was no love in her life. And her only person who gave her love was her grandmother. And since her grandmother died, her blood turned cold, which means her life turned pale like the moon. When you go to the moon, we can see that there are so many cold things and it is also deserted. So in the same way, her life is also deserted, pale like the moon. So children, have you understood the lines?
Yes.
Is there any doubts?
No.
So, since it is time, we shall continue the next lines in the next class. Thank you.